A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today, so cheers. Now, the book that I'm reviewing today is one that wasn't really on my radar, but the story behind how it came to be was really interesting to me, so I kind of went and ordered it and whatnot. And we're talking about Pay the Piper, a novel by George A. Romero and Daniel Kraus. Now, George Romero, of course, the godfather of the zombie films, starting with Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and all those other stuff. And the way this book came about was actually really interesting. Daniel Kraus was going through the George Romero archives, found a manuscript, an unfinished novel that George Romero had started, and decided to finish it. There was previously a work by the two of them called The Living Dead, I believe, from 2020. This was a novel that George Romero started, but sadly passed away in 2017, so could never get to finish the novel, and Daniel Kraus was hired to finish it. So this is very similar in vein. This came out this year, I believe. So this is a book that George Romero started, Daniel Kraus finished. I have ordered The Living Dead in order to read and review it on this channel for all of you little Plaguelandians out there. But today we are looking at Pay the Piper. Now, I cannot begin to tell you where George Romero's writing starts and Daniel Kraus's writing starts, because I've never read anything written by George Romero, so I don't really know what his writing style is like. Similarly, I don't know who Daniel Kraus is. He's an author I've never read before. I will say, however, that this book was fucking awesome. It was a lot of fun. It was unexpected. It was the sort of thing that you would kind of think Netflix would pick up and make into a 10-episode series. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of twists and turns and all of that kind of thing. You get a lot of backstory. So by the end of the novel, all of the characters that you have come to know and love are fully fleshed out, and they seem like real people. This book is set in a town called Alligator Point. It is in the Louisiana swamps near New Orleans. And so a lot of the characters kind of reflect what you would expect that kind of a lifestyle to be. They live in these shanties and whatnot. The town itself is being slowly kind of bought out by an oil company that has offshore oil rigs. So the people are kind of, the way of life and the people are dying out. Now, there are so many characters in this book. The main character, or who we believe is the main character, is this young girl called Pontiac, which is her last name. She doesn't like her first name, which is Renee. So we have Pontiac, we have her father Gerard, we have a fisherman who is kind of like this voodoo guy that Pontiac is friends with. We have her teacher, Miss Ward. We have the doctor of the town, who is no longer practicing medicine. And we have the sheriff, who is no longer a sheriff, and his deputy, who was never a deputy to begin with. So many characters, they all kind of come together as they realize what is happening in the town of Alligator Point. It's supernatural. It's almost environmental as well. There's that kind of aspect to it. And then you get this historical angle, I guess, with the pirate Jean Lafitte, who was actually a pirate and who does have ties to Louisiana, and who actually appears in H.P. Lovecraft's story, The Call of Cthulhu. So you've got all that going for it. If you don't want to know what happens, then, of course, you know, go watch another video. They're all fucking awesome anyway. But if you want to know what the story of Pay the Piper is all about, and I will be leaving a lot out of this because a lot happens in a short span of time, then just stick around for the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. People.
So this is, at its core, a horror novel, of course. You wouldn't expect anything less from George Romero. But it's strange in as much as it's a slow burn, but when the horror is there, it ramps itself up. So you get kind of these stops and starts. Now, what ultimately is happening, the broad scheme of things, is the town itself is being destroyed because of the sins of the past. The pirate Jean Lafitte presumably hid treasure in the town, which is an aside. It's got nothing to do with the story, but you think it does. It really doesn't. What the story is about is the people that Lafitte killed. Presumably the slaves that he captured and were thrown overboard in the course of his journey to kind of die in the ocean. And is the ocean itself, or a spirit of the ocean, that is the one causing all the problems. Now, the revenge on this town of Alligator Point has started slow, where everyone for a long time seems to be dying of cancer. But that is not enough. So the entity has ramped itself up and is now killing children. The first of which is this kid called Billy May, who is Pontiac's best friend. Billy May is lured from his house by the entity and is ultimately disemboweled and killed in the swamp. This is where we get all of the kind of characters coming together. So Pontiac is trying to come to terms with the death of her best friend, which she doesn't do very well, I might add. Pontiac is one of these children that's really kind of precocious, intelligent. She writes down everything in this old logbook. Her mother had previously passed away from cancer, pushing her father, Gerard, into alcoholism, which is a beast that he kind of can't get off his back. Then her teacher, Miss Ward, was in love with this guy called Jack, who was supposedly a crocodile or an alligator hunter, but in actual fact he was a monster hunter, and he understood the evil that was in Alligator Point and was tracking it down when he was subsequently killed. He was killed by trespassing on someone's property. That person shot them. That person was a prostitute with a young daughter. So the sheriff let her go while the doctor tried to save Jack's life but actually couldn't. So the teacher doesn't speak to anyone except her children in the classroom, which is slowly getting smaller because people are being paid off by the oil company to move away from Alligator Point. The sheriff's deputy is a former jockey who was trampled by a horse and kind of got brain damage, so he's a bit kind of slow, but came back to Alligator Point, and the sheriff stood up for him, and then that guy became his deputy. But there is no police force in Alligator Point. It was shut down due to budget problems, so the sheriff is only the sheriff in name. He doesn't actually have any power whatsoever. Now, all of these characters come together when kids start going missing. The first one, of course, is Billy May. The second one being a teenage girl called Pork Fat, who is in a band and who has been offered an audition for a music school and kind of wants to take it, but then never shows up because she's subsequently killed by the entity. Just hearing myself talk about this book is fucking batshit crazy. Like, oh fucking hell, I don't even know. So, Pontiac, who is kind of like the central character, starts working for the doctor, who is no longer a doctor after his wife died. His wife contracted breast cancer, and he blames himself for not diagnosing it earlier. So he shuts down his medical practice and becomes the like the town general store owner. And Pontiac, who likes to fish, wants this fishing rod that's in the window, goes to the doctor and says, "Hey, give me a job here. I'll work it off and you give me the fishing rod." He agrees. She finds a bottle out the back that is what the doctor calls like a zombie soul, and it's her job now to take care of that. The doctor, like Pontiac, has also been taking notes on the town itself, recording all the weird shit that happens because he's convinced that there's something wrong with Alligator Point. Pontiac takes the bottle home and is looking after it. Her father, who is an alcoholic, finds the bottle one day, drinks from it, and gets the zombie soul inside of him, making him act weird. And he goes on this mission to kill Pontiac's friend, the voodoo guy. But at the same time, Pontiac almost drowns in the ocean, and her father breaks free of the zombie soul and saves her and gets her the fuck out of town and takes her to his grandmother, who lives in Florida. So all through town there is this image that is carved into things of an octopus. There is a legend about this entity that is this octopus that believes itself to be beautiful. So it carries a mirror, but it's short-sighted, so it can't see its reflection. And this kind of carries on through the whole story. We get to the arse end of the book itself. A storm is about to hit Alligator Point, which is about to be destroyed. The entity has come to wipe everyone out because of the sins of the pirate Jean Lafitte. Gerard, who is Pontiac's father, heads back to town knowing full well that he has an understanding of how to stop this thing. The teacher teams up with the doctor and Gerard to work out what to do. Pontiac, realizing what her father has done, hightails her back to Alligator Point as well, knowing that she is one of the only people that can stop this entity by reading seashells. That's a whole other thing. We'll just ignore that. And the octopus entity kind of tests everyone. Now, at the very beginning of the book, Pontiac goes to this carnival where they have a cottonmouth snake as one of the exhibits in this kind of freak house thing. And she's terrified of it. And this is the same night that her best friend dies. So she goes back to the carnival and confronts the cottonmouth. And during the storm, everything gets knocked over and the cottonmouth bites her. Now that is a pretty much a deadly attack, because the cottonmouth snake, if you're not familiar, is one of the deadliest snakes in the world. But she manages to survive it thanks to her voodoo friend, who soaks her in the ocean and lets the salt water kind of wash over her, and she has the strength to get over that. And she manages to save the town of Alligator Point from this entity. And the entity itself almost negotiates with her. And although it's killed a lot of people at this point, kind of backs off a bit. And that is pretty much Pay the Piper. There's a lot of things I didn't include, of course. The writing style itself is fantastic, although it can be somewhat hard to read. The reason being the language that is used. Now, the co-author, Daniel Kraus, does make a note that he tried not to be disrespectful to the Cajun language, but he did write it in such a way that it would be easier for regular people to read. There is the co-author's note if you want to pause and read it. Right there. This was a really good book. It was written in a way that really captured the landscape, the lifestyle of people living in New Orleans. The food as well. There is a lot of descriptions of food which just made me fucking hungry. I've got to admit. And when they say they're eating mud bugs, I want to fucking eat a mud bug. That just sounds fucking delicious. It was a lot of fun. A fantastic book. I love the real world tie-in with the pirate, which initially I thought was taken just from the from Call of Cthulhu, but a little bit of research and like, wow, that guy was actually a real guy. So H.P. Lovecraft took it from a real guy, and then this guy took it from it was fucking awesome. Highly recommend. But if you don't want to read it and you're like, who the fuck was George Romero? Watch Night of the Living Dead. Watch Dawn of the Dead. Watch Day of the Dead. Watch Land of the Dead. Watch all of those movies. George Romero, fucking genius. Even Creepshow. Go and watch Creepshow. The collaboration he did with Stephen King. Absolute fucking brilliance right there. Pay the piper. You know, go fucking pay the piper. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that fucking YouTube stuff. I'm not fucking going to go into it, but most importantly, have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. Most importantly, read a fucking book, people.